How many kids did you have see this?
It's between 800 and 900 students is what we estimated, which is about half our student body.
What provoked you to be such a huge advocate to get this movie here?
Well, one of my secretaries, Jerry Batchelor, saw the movie, and she was just drawn in by it. She said it was a great message, and she said, you got to see it, you got to see it, you got to see it. And finally, we went together to see it with another secretary in our office and our school nurse, and I was just blown away. The message that it presented as far as dealing with issues, friendship, determination, and I thought, this is something that every kid needs to see. And after seeing the movie and being so moved by it, I felt it was important enough to have it during instructional time, because the message and the lessons learned are as important as the ABCs.
What's going on?
And I just felt that we needed to have as many kids see this as possible. Our hope was that students would go home, tell the parents how much they really enjoyed it, and then we'd have the parents come, and then they'd have discussions over the dinner table about what's going on and lessons learned. And to me, it was a great family film, but the message of friendship and determination and dealing with issues was just so important that I felt we had to show it. Not that we should, but we had to show it and let as many students see it as possible. One of the things, and I know a lot of people talk about, is when the students clapped and cheered when your mom poured the medicine down the drain, and I think that was a very powerful message, that adults really care, and when they think through things and get an opportunity to really discern what's going on, that they will make decisions, because we're all here to support the kids. And a couple students talked to me, they told me that's what they liked best about the show, was when they go, when Lyle's mom poured the pills down the drain, that was so cool. It was not a rebellion, it was a stand up, and we do have a voice somewhere, or somebody's watching out for us. And I think that was a very powerful message. Somebody has to stand up when something's wrong, and whether it's pouring the pills down the drain to protect her son, or if it's Mandela going to prison for years, people have to stand up for other people. And when you have the courage to do that, and when you know it's right, no matter what, it's right, then you need to take the action. We can't lose the sight that we are in a people business. You can take all the test scores, you throw them out the window. If we aren't preparing kids to be good human beings, then why are we in this business? Just to put somebody on medications because it's easier to control and there's no disruption in class, there's no issues with discipline, whatever.
It's something they've begun using in other schools around the country, and it's been a very successful way to mainstream problem children.
But I thought the movie did such a great job in showing how schools need to keep that in mind, that we can't do things for what's convenient for us. We have to do what's right. And it came out so clear in the movie. And I think because of that, that is another reason why there was that great reaction with the pouring of the pills down the drain, because everybody knew it was wrong. And David knew it was wrong, and he was questioning everybody and went to the principal and said, something's wrong with Lyle. He's not right. He's not the same person that he is.
Something wrong with Lyle.
And then to have the scene where David's mom was saying, we can't split up this friendship because he's finally a boy. He's finally able to go out and do things, and to
one of my greatest joys
come home
is
with
when he comes
all
home
messy
with
and
chickweed in his hair,
hay in his hair or whatever it
smelling like
was,
the
that
outdoors.
the fact that she saw how important it was to be the individual and to be yourself. That is a big message that we got out of the movie. And again, that was just another piece that convinced me that not only all our students should see it, but more importantly, all our parents should see it.
Every teacher, every pre-service teacher, every kid who thinks they want to be a teacher, they have to see this movie, because those are the kids in my classroom. I swear, if a person who wants to be a teacher sees this movie and it doesn't alter their vision of their job,
Yes.
they need to go do something else.
I saw it here at school the first time, and it really was just something I had to sit and process, because as a teacher, I identified kids in my classroom, students I've had, students in other classrooms, kids in the hall. And as a mom, I connected to, because we have a 6-year-old who has a little extra, so to speak. And we've kind of, we've really battled back and forth with what do we do with all of this energy. And for me, it was a lot of seeing that my kid's awesome, and that the way he is the way he's supposed to be. So that there are things that we can do around that, and with that, to celebrate who he is. And seeing that on screen for some reason was really powerful for me, in just accepting and embracing that my little guy has extra, and it's a great thing.
Same thing after I saw it again, is that we've been really struggling with my littlest, who's 6, and I don't know that she has extra. But she's hard to parent, and she's hard in the classroom, and I think our society automatically jumps to medication. But I think I am one of those people that drank the Kool-Aid, and I watched that movie the second time, and I went, oh my goodness. It was a paradigm shift for me, and it was changing. I mean, just in that moment, I think I changed how I parent, and I changed how I taught, and then realized that no, just like your guy, she's perfect, and she's going to be so successful outside of the realm of the classroom. And those are the kind of adults we want, is those really energetic and passionate kids to become adults, and I refuse to squelch it here.
Yeah, it was great, because it made me think and realize that kids like my Beckham and your Cora and Lyle they're the kids who make things happen, because they have passion, and they make things happen starting at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they always will be those people. And to squash that for me, to see that on screen, to squash that was just super eye-opening for me, that I need to celebrate his greatness, really, and just be proud of who he is and where he's going to take all that energy that we don't know what to do with all the time.
Adrian and I actually sat next to each other while we watched it here in the theater, and there were moments that we were both in tears, because it was that aha moment. I teach special ed, and a lot of times our school system is for our students to fit in a certain mold, and not all students are that mold. Their spunkiness, their passion, their awesomeness, we can't forget those things. It's not all about getting A's and 100% and sitting quietly at your desk. And to be able to see that on a big screen, and to realize that you don't have to fit that mold that society is telling public schools that we have to be, and to celebrate each and every student with their differences and with their uniqueness. And it was just...
Obedient kids never change the world.
When are you going to do it? Yesterday, tomorrow, Christmas, New Year's? When are you going to do it? There's only one time to start improving yourself. Now, N-O-W. This can make your life or break it.
I think sitting in the Commons that day was, I think when we all kind of had the courage to go, oh, I thought that too. Because I think it's something our society doesn't talk about. It's not okay to struggle with parenting, and it's not okay to struggle with teaching. You're supposed to be able to do it, and you're supposed to be able to do it well.
No matter what.
No matter what. And if you can't do it well, there has to be a drug to fix it. And that moment when we were all kind of talking, it was like a synergy. Like we all realized that it was while we were talking that together we can do it. And I think that, we just need to talk about it. We need to say, I got Johnny in class, and I don't know what to do. I can tell he's smart, but I can't get him to focus. And maybe someone has had success with him.
What works with you?
And and he can help me so that I can help Johnny. That needs to be okay. It needs to be okay to talk about.
Yeah, it did. We've talked, but I also went home. My husband hasn't seen the film, but talked to him about, how we've had that conversation, and we really were against medicating our kids for pretty much everything, just because we don't want to change who they are. It was affirming, I think, for us to say, yep, they're crazy boys, and they climb things, and they jump off things, and they break things, and they wiggle while they talk to you, and they can't sit still and read. But that's who they are. And it was nice to have something to have that conversation on a different level and say, hey, guess what? It's coming. We're being affirmed. There are people, it's coming down the pike where this is a conversation we're going to be able to have now, where it's, yeah.
We're losing the energy, and I give so many kudos to the janitor who let Lyle be himself and nurtured who Lyle truly was. And I think that the Lyles of the world need more janitors.
We really do. Adults who advocate for kids. Because I think as educators, as parents, people are really quick to put labels on kids. Whether it's ADD or any other disorder. And not enough people are willing to stand up and say, or
I
really
believe in you.
Yeah, encouraging what they are awesome at and letting that be their avenue and their way of succeeding. I think we need more cheerleaders.
Most of our kids that are Lyles today don't have that. When they go home, they get beaten because they run circles. And they get told they're stupid and they're losers.
Their disappointment.
And their disappointment because they're Lyles. Some of those kids, this is the only place that they are awesome.
Let's make sure it's...
Cut the crying out.
Yeah, get it. I just want to thank you for bringing this to our school. I think it was a big eye-opener for not just the amazing janitors at the school, but also the students. How the students started talking about this, and they got it. And it's a movie that has a much deeper meaning than the surface level, and that the fact that the students were talking about it. And I just thank you for bringing this message to our school.
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of the message that it brought, and I appreciate a message that makes kids who struggle real.
He's gonna pound me in the ground and pulverize me. That's the difference.
And heroes, and celebrates what great teachers, and not necessarily great teachers, but great adults can do in the life of a child. I was so excited to see, that's what I want people to know about me.
That's what I do.
And what I do. Yeah, so thank you for that.
And I echo them, but I also think as a parent, it allowed us the opportunity to really talk about it. I think that our society wants us all to look the same, and we don't admit that we have problems. And we don't talk about it. We put our hair product in and our fancy shoes on, and we go about our day, and when we get home, we struggle. And
like we're being held hostage.
Watching your mom in that movie.
I want my son back.
Own it and fix it.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
I'm Don Caron, the co-writer and co-director of Different Drummers, and what you're about to watch is a story of how Different Drummers came to be a feature film. In many ways, this story begins 9 years ago in 2004 when Lyle Hatcher and I formed a partnership specifically to create a screenplay and make a movie from the story. In fact, however, the story really begins back in the mid-1960s when 10-year-old Lyle was a fourth grader at Linwood Grade School on the north side of Spokane, and he met his best friend, David Dahlke, who was in a wheelchair with muscular dystrophy. You'll hear an interview with David's mother, Gloria Dahlke, who was 92 at the time the interview was conducted, in which she describes a special gift that her son David had. And it is that special gift that caused the events that took place back in the mid-1960s to stay with Lyle well into adulthood and essentially haunt him until he concluded that he needed to find a way to tell this story and to bring it to the entire world.
David was such an interesting child. When he first told me that God talked to him, he was 4 years old. That was when he told me that my girlfriend was going to have another little girl. I said, David, how do you know she's going to have a girl? He said, I asked God. God told me. And she did have another girl. And this was kind of the beginning. I asked him once, I said, how does God talk to you? And he looked at me like, what's the matter with you? Doesn't God talk to everybody? He said, he just comes into my mind and I understand. I did a little bit of a double take, but I said, oh, that's interesting. I never ever questioned or made any comments. I just listened to this boy.
So, David, when God talks to you, how do you know it's God? I've never thought about it before because I've always known it since the time I was little.
My son had a communication with whatever we call the Almighty. But that was all right with me. I never questioned him. I never asked him questions about it. I let whatever he had to say come freely from him. When he was in the 3rd grade, he had a very dear teacher. Her name was Mrs. McGuire. At that time, teachers did not have to accept a child in a wheelchair into their classroom. And Mrs. McGuire accepted David. She wanted him in her classroom. And they had a very close association. She was very ill. A great heart that he must have prayed for her. But he didn't call me, and he didn't call me, and he generally did. And finally I opened the door and asked, David, are you all right? And his little head was bowed. And I went over to him and he said, Mama, she's not going to make it. She's going to die.
There's something I need to tell you. It's about Mrs. McGuire. Miss O'Donnell called. She wanted you to know before you go to school tomorrow. I'm very sorry, but Mrs. McGuire passed away.
I need to go. Thank you for letting me swim in the pool, Mrs. Dahlke.
Of course.
I never said anything. I thought, how in the world does this child know this? There's so much about this boy that was different, and yet I tried very hard, our whole family did, for him not to be different, for him to have a life and be just one of the guys, one of the boys. And I think we succeeded.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! It's so cool! Look at how fast we're going, man! Oh, yeah!
It was 1959, and we bought the house, and it was Paul Riopel. And I told Paul, I said, okay, I said, we'll buy the house with one condition. You have to put a pool in this fall. I wanted it for therapy for David. See, that was the That was his main therapy, was swimming. He could swim in the pool where he couldn't walk on land. So he was confined to a wheelchair there, but in the pool he was free. Dina was teaching at the shallow end of the pool. She had a class in, and she was teaching that class. Dennis had brought him out to the pool and put him at the far end where the light is, you know, at the deep end, and he was sitting there on the ledge. And David thought that he could swim down to her and surprise her. He wanted to go under the rope and come up behind her because he could hold his breath a long time. But something happened. He was too weak. He had been 6, you see, and he thought he still had the strength, but he didn't. And that's when he went down. He was really gone. Well, I never prayed so hard in my life, but I prayed that God would let him come to and live. I passed my hand just this way over David's body, and as I passed my hand over his body, he breathed. And he opened up his eyes and he looked, and he said to me, I was almost there.
It was so beautiful. And then he sent me back.
I was almost there, but he sent me back. Interpret it anyway, but it was something.
The first time I met David was in the 4th grade. I had been put in the front row, primarily so the teacher could keep an eye on me. David, on the other hand, was in the front row because of his muscular dystrophy. He was in a wheelchair, so he was in the front so that he could be accessible to the door. So anyway, we ended up sitting next to each other and sharing a book, and that was the first time I ever met him. And David was just a quiet, easygoing guy. The teacher loved him. I didn't mind that he was the teacher's pet. Maybe at that point I could actually figure out a way to use that to my advantage. Over the last 40 years, I kept going back to the places that David and I, where we had our adventures, our friendship, all the fun places and the fun things we did together, the open fields, the hills, the river, the school. There was something that constantly kept pushing me back in that direction. Every single time I would go back, I would remember something different, something unique, and maybe something that gave me comfort and to some degree strength, something that I was missing that I left behind. The memories of David and I have been haunting me. I need to know why. Why would something like this stay with me for 45 years? At that point, that's when I found myself hiking higher and higher and further than the mountains, longer periods of time. At one point I was up on a mountain and I was waiting for a storm to come in, and I was frustrated at a point in my life, wondering what it was I was supposed to do with this story about my friend. I could see off in the distance the thunder and the lightning coming, and I welcomed it. At that point, as I stood there, I felt that something was speaking to me and that I was enlightened as to my purpose. I was enlightened as to my calling. The story of David and our friendship should be a movie. First thing I needed was to get it in writing, put it on something solid, something that I could hand off. So I set up an appointment. I wrote out the initial story and was bound and determined. I took my checkbook and off I went. If there was anything I could do, I could certainly pay someone and get the ball rolling. In deciding to put this on a CD, I made a call to the local production company, ending up sitting next to him working with Don Caron, who ultimately became my co-writer and co-director on this story for the last 8.5 years. Well, I took my 5-page little script that I had. Don put me into a room, handed me some headsets.
Whenever you're ready.
Hi, this is Lyle Hatcher, and this is my true story from grade school. It's called Different Drummers. I am yanking on my shirt, trying to get air, and wiping the sweat off of my clammy hands. Miss O'Donnell, the principal, can't stop her lip from trembling and refuses to move her hands from the folded prayer position. Her mouth is dry as she shakily sips from
Must
a
have been a
half-empty
seed
glass.
there, because it wasn't too long then at the end of this process of putting different drummers on a DVD, Don looked at me and said, "What do you intend to do with this?" And I smiled. I said, "Well, I think it should be a movie." And he held up his hand and he pointed a finger up in the air. He said, "Now this is the most important question." He said, "Is this a true story?" And I said, "It is." He told me right then and there, he said, "This is the one. This is the one I've been waiting for." Well, when someone like that talks to you and tells you that, that's a strong message. It was the next day that Don showed up at my office and had a contract in his hand. And eventually it came down to not a signed contract. I believed him to be a man of his word, which is rare in these times. I reached across my desk and I shook his hand, and that was our friendship and our partnership all in one moment, right there. I don't think either one of us knew that we were about ready to sacrifice all those years, and of course every penny we had, including our retirement accounts, in order to move something that the only thing we knew is our hearts and minds said this is something we had to do. Once we had decided to write the screenplay, Don and I got together one morning and I drove him around to all the places where David and I hung out. We went to the fish hatchery, we went to our old grade school, went to all the places in the screenplay and in the movie. I ended up at about 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. I ended up in front of David Dahlke's old house where he lived back in 1965. Knocked on the door, and a little white-haired, beautiful, elderly woman answered the door. There she was, Gloria Dahlke, David's mother. And I said, "I'm Lyle." I started to say my last name, and she said, "I know who you are. I've been waiting for you." She said, "If you guys are going to do this, you're going to need some things." So she invited Don and I to go down into the basement. Now that basement was where David and I used to play, and there were all kinds of incredible things. His brother was a taxidermist, and it was just an amazing place. I walked downstairs and nothing had changed in 40 plus years. It was still the same. Gloria Dahlke, David's mother, walked across the room, and there was a big chest, and she opened it up, and inside that were all the things that David and I had as friends. My phone number, a letter from my brother, who was 8 years old at the time when David was not feeling well. There were some of the toys and some of his clothes. We actually filmed all the events that happened 40 years earlier in that same house, in the same basement, in the swimming pool, in his own room. Don and I were working late one night. It was we were working in his little house that he was selling at the time in order to keep our process moving. And he received a phone call. At the end of the phone call, I asked him, I said, "Who was that?" And he said, "Oh, it's the Houston Film Festival. They wanted to know if we were coming to their festival." So I called them back, and they encouraged us. They said, "We'd really encourage you to come." Now, Houston International Film Festival is one of the oldest film festivals in the country. I wanted to go. I wanted the adventure. There must be a reason they're inviting us. We got to Houston, and it's a very long process. It starts at 8 and ends at midnight. By the time it had gotten to midnight, everybody at our tables and everybody around us had their awards. I was feeling like I somehow had screwed up the dates or the times and that we shouldn't be there. Don and I went to the front desk, and I asked him, I said, "Hi, I'm Lyle Hatcher, and I'm here to ask about different drummers." And the young lady that was in charge smiled at me, and she said, "Sir, I strongly advise that you go sit down." We went back, we sat down, and the last award, which was the Grand Remington, the #1 project over the thousands of projects over 32 countries, was awarded right then to different drummers. That was a big piece of us waking up the next day and saying, we must be doing something right. We must be on the right path. Let's keep going.
And I first met Lyle Hatcher back in the fall of 2004 when he came into my office at North by Northwest in order to record a story that he had written onto a CD. And in the process of recording this story, I realized I was listening to what was clearly the best idea I had ever heard for a movie. What struck me about this story was it had the type of characters and the type of diversity and the type of character arcs that you would struggle to come up with in writing fiction. And it was all built in, it was all true, it was all already there. It didn't have a screenplay structure to it naturally, but I felt that was something that we could easily accomplish. And so within 48 hours, Lyle and I had formed a business partnership and had begun work on the screenplay for different drummers. By January of the following year, I had quit my job at North by Northwest in order to devote myself full-time to writing the screenplay. And about a year later, we won the Grand Remington from the Houston World Fest International Film Festival and Best Screenplay from the San Fernando International Film Festival. Those awards at the time seemed to us to be a stamp of credibility, and not just to the degree that we were on the right path, that certainly, but also it gave us the confidence to begin to move forward with the process of finding the funding in order to turn the screenplay into a feature film. The approach that we took, because we did have some resources at that point in time, was we hired Derek Kavanaugh, who was the producer for Dances with Wolves, in order to put together a budget for us and a time schedule. And we also hired casting director Mike Fenton, who was the casting director for The Godfather and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Back to the Future. And he put together a list of potential actors for us. Our goal was to do a investor presentation where we would invite all the individuals from Spokane who we thought had the means or the interest in investing in a movie. Well, Gary and Lisa Marks had been on board and big supporters of this project from the time we started it, and they ultimately became our executive producers. However, we did not get a single additional investor from our presentation. Gary and Lyle continued over the next year to leave no stone unturned looking for people who might be interested in investing, but really nothing turned up. And so at that point we decided it might be effective as a tool to have a book instead of a screenplay. We felt that if we wrote a book, the emotional power of the story would be more apparent and it would be a better tool for finding investors. Initially, we had conducted interviews with all of the individuals that we could find that were still alive when those events happened. Anyone that had somehow touched on those events that were in our story, we would interview them. Deciding to write the book meant going back to square one, and we did the interviews again in more detail. So by 2010, we had finished the book, and it almost immediately became a local bestseller at Barnes & Noble and Auntie's. We spent that following year doing book signings and handing out books to potential investors and just spreading the message about the story and our intent to make it into a movie just everywhere we could. And yet, even with all that effort, we still did not find another investor. At that point, I had spent my IRA and I had sold my house to live on the money while we were moving the project forward. We had hit rock bottom in our business venture. We had reached a point where we hadn't seen a lead or even a second generation lead for months and months. And I remember in my conversation with Lyle, we had to have a pretty serious heart-to-heart about it because I was stepping aside, and I even offered to sell him my shares in the movie, which thankfully he declined. So I started an internet marketing business and put my focus into that. And it was several months later when I got a surprise visit from Mark Dahlstrom, a local producer. And Lyle had approached Mark to brainstorm the possibilities of one last try at moving this project forward and getting this movie made. And Mark was clearly intent on doing that when he contacted me. And his first question was, what would it take to get this book adapted back into an updated screenplay? So I went to work on that in late 2011 and finished it in the spring of 2012. So we now had a completed production screenplay based on the updated version of the story that had been represented in the book, and we had some additional funding. And I got a call from Mark in August, and he said, we're going to move ahead with the movie. What I saw was that there was 3 enormous potential obstacles to success with this movie. One was weather. We all know how the weather is in the Northwest, and I just had visions of this outdoor movie being just inundated with snow, and I really wasn't seeing a way to write our way out of that, given the story that we were dealing with. There was also the issue of the time limitation in starting pre-production so soon. We didn't have any leads on the 2 main actors of the movie, the 2 boys, and we all agreed, and we always had, that if we didn't have the right 2 boys, we couldn't make the movie. And lastly, we didn't have all the money. We're sitting in that meeting, I'm voicing my objections. Mark Dahlstrom is the polar opposite of myself on this position. He's just utterly optimistic that it's all going to work. Gary's concerned that if we don't make the move right now, that the new investors that we've brought on are not going to wait. And Lyle agrees with Gary. So the 3 of them are ready to move forward on the movie. So we decided right then and there, let's do it. Let's make this movie.
No, he's not, but it looks like Braden's screening, so he needs to Mark it. Set. Action.
I can't do it! Help me, Lyle!
The buttons jump out. I kind of like the little wiggle on that. All right, that's it. Yeah, we can move on. Can I get a camera wedge in here, please, or just a regular wedge like this? I got it. You guys camera set. Ready, and action. All right, thank you. Ready, and action. Let's do last looks of Braden now that he's...
Here you go, dancer boy. Why don't you hoochie coochie with that for a while?
Mark it. Mark. All right, set. Action.
It's so cool! Look at how fast we're going, man!
How come you're in a wheelchair?
I've got muscular dystrophy.
How come they make you run all the time? I got this thing. It's kind of a problem.
Dino, go get help! Can you feel the energy? Big smiles!
Mr. Hatcher.
Oh, yeah.
Stop it!
What's it for, anyways?
It's my urinal tube.
What's going on?
We're talking about the science fair.
You want to help me?
My old man said I can't ever do another one with you.
I was thinking, you and me, we can do a giant bug collection. I've got a super secret weapon. You do?
Ah,
They're loose.
Ah, look out, look out!
Here.
Oh, yuck. You can't tell anyone I'm teaching you how to run. But you can't tell anyone my secret either.
When God talks to you, how do you know it's God? He just comes into my head and I know the answer.
Hey, David, let's go sledding.
Pull the brakes, David! David, pull the brakes!
How badly was the donkey boy hurt?
I'm sorry, David. Why am I always getting in trouble? What's wrong with me?
Nothing at all. A drug? It's been a very successful way to mainstream problem children.
You're awfully quiet today. I take a pill now, because I was driving everybody crazy.
Have you seen Lyle?
I thought he was with you. I guess I fell asleep.
What are you doing to that boy? It's not right, and you know it.
I want my son back.
he will no longer remain in my school.
Let's run! Friends don't bail.
A boy needs to be a boy.
I need to figure out a way to help David. He's getting worse.
Sometimes all you can do is be the best friend that you can be.
Don't forget me. The next time you talk to God, ask him if you'll ever run again. I did ask God about that. What did he say? He told me I would. With you.
I'm Ethan Reed McKay. I'm playing David. David is a young boy, 11 years old, and he has muscular dystrophy, which is a degenerative muscle disease that turns muscle into fat. And what's fatal about it is that eventually, after it goes over your entire body, it starts working on your heart and lungs, and eventually they just, stop working. Well, it's definitely difficult because it's such a challenging role, and yet I have to be paying attention to the physicality to make sure that the audience doesn't get thrown by it and then get taken away from the story. So it's difficult. What I did to prepare for it was I tried to ask a lot of questions to Lyle because he had been around David. And I also went on YouTube and I looked up videos of kids with muscular dystrophy and kind of tried to observe how they move and how their physicality is. And what I noticed is that lots of times they have a scoliosis, so their spine kind of bends, and eventually their body gets weak, so they can't really support their back, and it goes back like this. And the input Lyle gave me is that when he's on the wheelchair, David, he never had his hands on the armrests, he always had them off the side. So I tried to implement that. Also, what was very challenging is not moving my legs. What I think is very interesting about David though is that even though he has no time, he doesn't have very much time to live, and he knows that, he's just not selfish at all. I mean, he's very giving to other people. There are a lot of times where I try to draw from my life experiences, times where I know there's something that I'm only going to be able to experience for a small amount of time. And also, I just try to know the character very well. I do a lot of thinking about it. I just try to make sure that since he's a real person, I just try to inhabit him as much as possible, but know that he's already predefined, so I have to fulfill that. That's one of the biggest responsibilities for me. It may sound strange, but I actually did a lot of talking to God, and I just tried to listen as much as I could instead of trying to define the role for myself, because I knew if I got all of these ideas in my head of who David was and how I imagined him, then the character might seem very artificial. So I just tried to take direction very well and also do a lot of deep thinking about the character. The most difficult thing is that he goes to heaven for a brief amount of time and he comes back. And obviously there's no way that I could know what that looks like. But I had to imagine it and completely commit to it. So that was the most challenging scene for me so far. This story for me is very holy. Not in a biblical sort of way, but for me, whenever I meet someone, especially if they're incredibly nice and self-giving, who knows that they aren't going to live for very long, it's almost like they're on loan to us on earth from God, because they're going to be going back very soon. So it was very difficult and complex to have the responsibility of embodying that in David. I had to find a way to appear ethereal, but not at all aloof. That was the most interesting part and my favorite. My relationship with Brayden is very interesting because our characters are very contrasting. So when we're preparing for a character, it's very different. So there has to be a deep level of respect and understanding for there not to be like clashes. We actually have very good chemistry, so it's interesting to be able to work with somebody who can embody that character well, because it helps me know how to play David. Well, it's definitely fun, but it's also a challenge. I wouldn't necessarily call it a burden, but I have to carry a lot of weight and make sure that the story is told properly, because it's a really beautiful one and it's one that needs to be told.
Brayden Tucker, Brayden Tucker, and playing the role of Lyle. Lyle Hatcher is, when in the movie, he is a little kid, like me and myself, and just full of joy, playing outside all the time, catching bugs, and just having fun. He always gets hurt, but he doesn't care. He takes it like a man, and he doesn't want people to know that he's hurt. I'm being myself. I have my little sister Shayla's in a wheelchair. Sure, I can react to that. I can react to being a friend, helping a friend in a wheelchair that has a disability. And just being myself. I love to be outside. It's just, it was me. It was me, my sister. It just worked so well. And when I auditioned with Ethan, I auditioned one time. I got it on video, and then they asked us back again. And then they asked us back again, and then they asked us back again. And when I went to that fourth audition, I did it with 3 other Davids. So when I had one with Ethan, that plays the part of David, I just knew. I knew it was him. I told my mom. It's just, we were so good together. It's perfect. He's just calmer, but he's super smart. You don't think it when you see it, but he's smart. And the crew's fun. I really like Miss O'Donnell. She has a great personality, very creative. We play soccer sometimes, and she's cool. And I also like my mom, my fake mom in the movie. She's really funny too. It's all comes together so well. You didn't think that it takes so many people. I mean, the guy that controls the camera helper, and producer and director, that's all. And get your guys. Nope, there's like 300 people for lights, oh my gosh. Lyle right now, I come over to his house all the time. We hang out, we watch movies. He's still the same old guy. He loves bugs still. He's always with his dog, and he's just fun, energetic, and he's not soft like you think he would over the age. He's super fun. I hang out with him all the time, and it's great. It's awesome. Don is amazing. The stuff he can do, it's just cool how he can do all that stuff. And I've been with Don all the time. We hang out. We got it, and before we even started shooting, 2 weeks we were rehearsing. We were going everywhere, going out for dinner all the time, and we went to the Chiefs game and hung out there, and it's just weird because he's always eating vegetables. I don't think I've ever seen him eat anything but vegetables. It's like, can't you get sick of that? Movie business, soccer is what I do. I love soccer. Soccer is my passion. I could play that for hours at a time of the day. If some very nice movie comes along, yes, I'll take it. I'll still miss my team, but you know, like say I get in the second Avengers. Wouldn't take that, I mean, seriously. But this is the movie I got, and I just really thought that I would get the part. And one 11-year-old gets to play the part in the movie, you know?
My name is Colleen Carey, and I am playing Dorothy O'Donnell. Miss O'Donnell is the principal of Lyle and David's school. She is a real person, which makes it very challenging as an actress because I really wanted to get it right or sort of understand her, that she's not just a villain as seen through the eyes of two young boys, but that she really, really, really loves her student. And genuinely, she's afraid for Lyle. And so a lot of her moments of harsh discipline come from this sense of fear. Anything that's out of place gives her fits because, in truth, I think that she was a lot like Lyle. It's a grandiose idea, and I really do like him. I really do see his potential. I really do see his largesse and compassion and the dynamism that he possesses as a little boy, which is the promise that he will, take with him into manhood.
Miss O'Donnell, ugh. I like her. I think she's nice. Well, why don't you marry her then?
Lyle does display many symptoms of the condition they call MBD, minimal brain dysfunction. So when I read the sides, I was really intrigued by that phrase.
Minimal brain dysfunction?
That was the current description of this disorder that they knew existed, but they didn't really know that much about. What I'm explaining to you is that they've created a medication that we can use to calm him down. I just want to slam something on the desk and tell her why she's wrong. But I thought, wow, that would be a really fun challenge to try to make it seem real, to make it seem sympathetic, to make Miss O'Donnell not a villain, but another human being with a viable point. There was a line that it was a behavioral concern and it affected the other students. And it was interesting to me to sort of see it from that perspective, to see her side of the argument. She really thought it through and did a lot of research and spoke with as many doctors as she could and is concerned for the safety of the entire school. And I've known a lot of kids like Lyle who, when given specific instructions in numbered format, completely misinterpret, and with no malice whatsoever. Just, it's just that that's what they see. They think that that's the right thing to do. And I was like just totally charmed by how well Lyle was written.
Definitely. And you know what else?
I cried quite a bit when I read the script. I love the story. I was very excited about it. And then when I was able to read the whole script, I was thrilled. It really, really ignited my passion in such a way that...
Are you with me?
I was really swept away. Braden is charismatic and he's so excited about everything and he wants to learn everything like all at once. So I don't really see it as him being hyperactive. I see him as having sort of extra life. And Ethan he's wonderful. He's so bright. I would be terrified to play a game of chess with him. He is on point. He knows what the shot is. He knows, what his lines are, and he is prepared to work. So it's funny that they're so different, even if I weren't working on the project. Having read the script and like picturing two boys, though they're just like perfect casting.
I'm Lisa Coronado, and I'm playing Hazel Hatcher. When I got the first set of sides for the first audition, I instantly connected with the material. As an actor, you try not to want a part too bad, because if you, with a disappointment, I'm not getting it, but this one I wanted so bad. And then when I got into the audition, I had on heels, and the casting director asked me, well, how tall are you? And I said, you know, without my heels, I'm 5'2". And pretty embarrassed, you know, because I hate being short. And she was like, that's perfect for this role, take your shoes off. And made me audition without my shoes. And I was like, pretty liberating. It felt really great. And so then when I went back to the callback, I wore flats. When I read the book that she was very short, at that point I was like, okay, this is the first time my height is working for me. So I'm just pretty lucky and blessed to have been able to play Hazel Hatcher. At the same time, I got to live up to this woman, and how fascinating and phenomenal she was. And there is a little bit of extra pressure, and yeah, it's a little scary because, you know, you're playing somebody that's real and trying to do it justice. I don't know how she did it, you know, and her husband was working so hard, and she was trying to do schooling. And so one of the things about her is that she's musical and that she can play the piano, and I can completely relate to that. I have a piano in the downstairs of my house as well, and when I need a break, I go down and I start playing it, which was another weird coincidence. I love any kind of period film. I'm drawn to those kind of films. So when I found out it was in the 60s, that excited me. And then when I got the sides, I think it was a particular set where I'm trying to cook dinner and deal with Lyle and the dog and all this stuff going on at once. And it was just such a real family moment that I've experienced myself. And the way it was done was, it was written so funny. I connected on that level as being a mom and, you know, trying to run a household. I'm lucky as an actor that I get two directors that also wrote the material, so that they're very familiar with it. They have a very strong vision. It's interesting because their approaches are very different. Lyle's really wants to recreate the way that it was, and it's fascinating, all of the details, everything that he puts into it. And then Dawn comes in from a little bit more bird's eye, I guess, but really wanting to move the audience in a certain way. It was really fascinating because one of them wanted me to cry and one of them didn't. And so I didn't cry, and then Dawn came up to me and said, okay, it's okay, I want you to cry on these 2 takes. And so I did, and then on the 3rd take, Lyle comes over and he goes, I don't want you to cry, you gotta hold it in to the very end. And when, you know, Braden's out of your eyesight, you can let it out. And I was like, okay, and so going through that, I needed what Dawn gave me to get to the point where Lyle wanted me to go. So it was this really cool blending of directing where it got me exactly where they both needed me to be. So it's been fascinating, and I've never had directors that have had so much information for me, and it's just, it's awesome. It's one of the best scripts I've read in a really, really long time. It's very full and rich and complete. It ends beautifully. It's so genuine, and I don't think a film like this has come out in a long time. It's been a while. Just this coming of age of 2 kids, and told in such a way that's really inspiring, and that parents and kids can like it. You know, I can share it with my family, which is fantastic. Not all my films I can. And every character I fell in love with, every single one. And, you know, when I was picked to audition for Mrs. Hatcher, you could have said audition for any of these women and I would have jumped, because they were so well written. It's a beautiful film. I'm really excited to see it finished. I can't wait.
My name is D.R. Anderson, which stands for Daniel Ray Anderson, and I play Mr. Merrick, the janitor. Mr. Merrick is a great character, honor of a part to play. he kind of looks after the kids that are always getting in trouble. Our main two protagonists always end up in the boiler room, which is his domain, and he kind of stands out as a fatherly figure, support. He's there to make sure they learn their lesson, but also teaches them along the way. And it's kind of the good guy, and it's a good part to play. Sweet story based on two 11-year-old boys. One's kind of hyperactive, the other's got muscular dystrophy. They become unlikely friends. Like I said, I kind of do some grounding and guiding along the way in the adventure that is their story. And it's got a good message.
Place needs fumigating.
It's a really sweet, heartfelt story. And it's really interesting being based on a true story and having little Lyle the actor and older Lyle the real man. It's interesting to have that dynamic on set and having one of the co-directors directing his own story. So having those details, and when we talk about don't build a volcano for science class because last year you burned off my eyebrows, you know, he pulls us aside and is like, well, I'm gonna have to tell you the real story about when I burned off Mr. Merrick's eyebrows. So it brings a real authenticity to it, and it's just very different not to be working from complete fiction of the page, but overall it's neat to have the actual person on set being able to fill in those little spaces. The interesting thing about these kids, especially first coming onto set and kind of peeking in at them filming scenes, is they're really natural, and that's what hit me right off the bat watching them film. Is adults kind of have to unlearn some of their bad tricks, and kids just kind of get in there and be. And as an actor, that's what we're trying to do. So it was a pleasant surprise to see that the kids were right at it. So we could probably take a lesson from them. But I wouldn't say that with them in the room. You can come here. The first shot. Well, when we were doing the handstand scene, he was supposed to do a poor handstand so that I could show him how to do a good one. And come back here. Out of nowhere, he starts nailing a handstand freeform in the room, so I have to push him down to be like, no, this is how you do it, which doesn't work. But I think the original funny story was my first day on set with you. I'd run across the schoolyard to see if he was okay, if he broke his neck. And the whole area just smelled like and there was only one accomplice over there.
I promise it was him.
There's no proof of that, and I ratted him out, so. He's a good kid, a little bit stinky. We'll keep that just between us and the EPK.
Oh my gosh. It was all you.
Uh-huh.
I am Meg McLinn, playing Mrs. Gloria Dahlke. My first day in, Lyle drove me over to Gloria's, and I was nervous. This is the first time in my career that I've ever had the opportunity to play somebody who's living, that I could actually meet. And granted, I'm playing Gloria 40 plus years ago. I was thrilled to get to meet her. As soon as I walked into that house, she's the kind of woman you just want to give a hug to, and you want to get a hug back. She's warm, just full of warmth, and this softness about her, this brightness to her that you just want to be near her. You really do. And she's pretty special, I've got to say. So yes, I got to meet Gloria, and it was awesome. It was really awesome. in moving into the pool scene. At one moment I looked up, I was standing outside watching the scenes take place, and I looked up and Gloria was watching these scenes being shot, and again there was just a look of serenity on her face. But for me, all I could think is, how surreal must it be witnessing a reenactment of what had to be a horrifying experience, and also one of the most incredible godly experiences. It was a challenge, but having Gloria so close by made it easy for me to really focus on what it was that I had to do. And what I had to do was make God hear me and let him know that this was not the right time. And so yeah, it was a very emotional scene, but it was, I think because I had the chance to talk with Gloria, it was less about the pain and the anxiety and more about the determination to not let this thing happen. And it's a beautiful story. It's a very well crafted story.
Now this might hurt a little.
And to see
Here, give me your thumb.
two boys who on their own really would have been put into corners.
God to stop obsessing over Sharon Ann. Granted, she's cute, but that doesn't mean you have to go.
So the way these two boys came together was beautiful, and then just seeing them see life through each other's eyes, it's so cool. And I think it's a great story. It resonated with me as an adult, as a sibling, as a mother. And it resonated, it's just such a human story. It's the kind of story that we always hope. When I watch the news and I watch the world, these are the kind of stories I wish they would just remind us this happens all the time. And if we could just highlight these kind of stories more. In any case, it's a beautiful story. I think it's powerful on a lot of different levels.